Hey everyone, it's Simone Watson, and I want to talk about the show don't tell rule of writing. So it's Thursday, so writing video day, yay! And sure, let's get into the show don't tell rule. Now, here's the thing about this: the show don't tell rule. When people tell you show don't tell, this happens in novel writing and in screenwriting. But the funny thing is, it means two very different things in those contexts. And so I wanted to be a screenwriter when I was a teenager, and I started writing screenplays and learned this rule. And then later on, after writing the first draft of Red Letter Law and like deciding that I wanted to like really pursue novel writing, then I started to hear the show don't tell rule, and I was confused because I didn't understand how that rule from screenwriting could possibly apply to novel writing. And I'm starting to gain a better understanding of that now. So let's talk a little bit about the show don't tell rule in screenwriting, because it is, first of all, literal, and second of all, it's like the main rule. Okay, so in screenwriting, show don't tell, again, it's the main rule. It's not just a rule; it's the rule. Everything that you do in screenwriting fits into the show don't tell rule, and with good reason. It's because film is an audio-visual medium, which means it's visual, right? So when we watch a film, things are being shown to us. And the reason why the show don't tell rule is so important for screenwriters to remember is because there's something called exposition, which is like, this means something else in novel writing too, I think, or it means something kind of similar. But in like exposition is when you're being told what's going on by like dialogue and narration. So narration, generally screenwriters are told this: if you can go without a narrator, go without a narrator. Okay, only have a narrator if like it's important or if like it really adds to the story. But a lot of stories can be told without a narrator in film. But if you do have a narrator, use your narrator sparingly. You don't want your narrator to tell us things that are like right there on the screen. And this happens in some films, right? So we all know some films where this happens, but we're saying to get the best screenplay possible, you don't want your narrator telling you things that are right there on the screen, because that would be telling versus showing. You also don't want your characters to say too much and reveal too much information in their dialogue to the point that the dialogue feels boring and like unrealistic. Not that realism in dialogue is an exact science, because some dialogue is going to be unrealistic, but you don't want it to be like just ridiculous, and so you want, as much as possible, that's basically it, as much as possible, you let information be communicated to the audience through visual means. Okay, so for example, instead of a character saying to another character, hey, I've started going to AA meetings, right? Because I think I have a drinking problem. Sometimes they'll tell them this, right? But if they're saying I've started going to AA meetings, but we could just see them going to an AA meeting, that could be more effective depending on how important that is to the story. You don't want to have too many flashbacks. But these are just all interwoven rules, but really show don't tell really is the rule, right? And so you don't want characters to just say like, I'm sad, I'm angry, whatever. What things can they actually do that would show us how they're feeling? Okay, so that's where show don't tell comes in screenwriting. And I could talk more about this, but the thing that's interesting is it plays out very differently when you are writing a screenplay from the way it plays out in a novel. Okay, when you're writing a screenplay, you only have 90 to 120 pages to tell the story, because one page equals 1 minute. That's the industry standard. Now, screenwriting is like novel writing in the way that when you are established, well, I shouldn't use that in quotes, but really, when you're established, when you are well known in the industry, you can break the rules. So if like Christopher Nolan wants to make a 4-hour movie, he can do that because he's established in the industry. But if you are a beginner, you're generally going to be expected to keep it between an hour and a half and 2 hours. And so you have limited space. you want 90 to 120 pages. You don't want to put too much detail on the page that's going to just take up space and like not add much to the film. So you learn to say things in a concise manner. Okay? Now, being concise in the dialogue is a thing, and you do want to be concise in the dialogue. You want to keep it interesting, you want to keep it moving forward, but you're also going to be concise in your I forgot what they're called, like action beats or something, action tags. When you tell what your characters are doing, you say like she sits in the chair. You don't want to say she sits lavishly in the plush, burgundy velvet chair which had been gifted to her by her late great uncle, who never really said a nice word to her in his life and therefore felt guilty enough to bestow upon her this chair in his demise. Wow, I just like made up a fancy sentence. That's weird. Because that's what I'm struggling with in my novel writing, is like trying to make my sentences more interesting. But anyway, in screenwriting, you say she sits in the chair. You can use an adverb or an adjective if it's like important or whatever, but it's concise. You go more towards being concise. But that's how you show in screenwriting, right? Is by concise sentences that tell us what exactly people are doing. And mostly don't tell us how they're feeling because we want to be shown how they're feeling, right? But in novel writing, when people say show, don't tell, it's the exact opposite, right? So when you're showing and not telling in a novel, to say like she sits in the chair would be considered telling. Well, not really. That wouldn't really be considered telling. But like certain things in a novel, if it's too concise, it's going to be called telling. And so they want you to give them like descriptive details, like what kind of chair is it? Or I don't know, it's debatable which things you describe and which things you don't describe, but descriptive detail is how you show in a novel. Because showing in a novel is not literal, of course, but we want to paint a picture on that person's imagination with words. Oh, wow, that sounds really cliche. But yeah. And so it's interesting because I've been trying to learn how to show and not tell in my novel writing, and it's difficult, but it takes practice like anything. And I saw someone on Twitter say, hey, and this was like a well-respected like literary agent who was like, hey, people tell you to show and not tell, but actually you should tell. You should just tell better. And I like almost had a mini freak out because I was like, am I doing it wrong? Oh, I'm learning how to show and I should be learning how to tell. But then I realized like, no, when he's saying tell better, that kind of plays into what people are talking about with showing and not telling in a novel. It's kind of a similar thing. It's just knowing which things to give the descriptive detail on and which things you can kind of make more concise, I think. So there's definitely more that I have to learn on this topic, and there's more that can be discussed, and I would love to hear some, thoughts from you. So tell me in the comments, do you write screenplays? Do you write novels? Do you find showing versus telling to be a struggle, or do you find that you tend to show too much? Do you tend to give too much descriptive detail in your novels? Or, whatever, just let me know. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you Monday. Bye. I just hit myself in the face. Bye.